Welcome everybody to another episode of Beyond Haunted Vermont this time, because this time we're going to go into a different state because, well, we have a paranormal researcher, investigator, and all things really paranormal. He can go into it more, but he's been doing this for exactly like 50 years now, since 1975, and here we are in 2025 doing this. But what caught my attention about this special guest today also is he wrote about the mysterious spook lights, phantom lights, fairy lights, ghost lights. It goes on and on. But anyway, let's get our guest on. Dale Kaczmarek. Dale, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. It's got to be lovely weather for all of us, I guess. We're heading into the winter months, but I mean, anyway, like you were just saying off the air real quick, yeah, I mean, summertime is always the best time to go out to do this type of thing anyway, unless, like, as we get into it, maybe with your research, you would say differently. But Dale, so I guess I just want to start real quick because I'm more curious too, and I bet the listener, if they have never heard of you, what really got you into this, phenomenon that we call the supernatural anyway?
Well, basically, it was, believe it or not, my parents and grandparents telling me ghost stories when I was a youngster. And kind of sounds kind of corny, but that's basically what kind of started me off. My parents came from Poland. My dad was kind of the ghost hunter of the family, so to speak. And back in the late 1930s, there's a very famous ghost story in Chicago, Resurrection Mary, a hitchhiking ghost story. It goes back to the 1930s. And my dad had heard about this when he was growing up, obviously, and was younger. And while he was dating my mom back in the late 1930s and early 1940s, that's when the story really took off here in Chicago. So when my dad used to take my mom out to a dinner, a movie, a show, whatever, and always on the way home on a Saturday night, he would run and drive around the cemetery in the middle of the night. My mom was absolutely terrified. She didn't want anything to do with this ghost. And it was later on that, in fact, that was my very first ghost story I was ever told as a youngster. And later on, as I grew older, I wanted to find out these were true stories, were they urban legends, old wives' tales, folklore. And that's what really got me started into kind of tracking down some of these stories I had heard earlier. And then, of course, later on, when I founded the group called the Ghost Trackers Club back in 1977, I worked as a research assistant for 5 years. And then later on, it became the Ghost Research Society in 1982. And I've been traveling all across the country, around the world. I've been to Scotland, England, Wales. Going back there again next year. I'll be taking in Ireland. And try to, just broaden my scope of what I can see and experience in my lifetime.
Very nice. Yeah. I'm not going to lie, Dale. When I found like your ghost research website and found your biography, I was just like, oh my God, because that's probably the longest biography I've seen, but it's awesome. I loved how you separated everything from all your appearances, books, everything. And Dale, as I may say, if you enjoyed chatting with me tonight, I just want to say I got to have you back on anyway, because you know what? One thing that caught my attention in your biography that I don't really think anybody else, again, talked about it anymore is the spirit photography. I feel like that has also shied away, and I used to love going into deeper dives into that, because again, that's another one that always has fascinated me. But I know we're here on Spook Light or Phantom Light. Which one do you prefer, so that way I can kind of stay with you on it?
I like to call them ghost lights, but ghost lights or spook lights are the two that most often come up. Sometimes they call them corpse candles. I mean, there's all different terminology, but I think for the most part, most spook lights are called either spook lights or ghost lights. And they're kind of interchangeable.
Right. Well, I mean, as I may say too, it all depends on who you're talking with too, because as you were saying with ghost lights, that's like somebody trying to say that souls of a deceased person trying to make contact or something like that. Forgive me too if I start like forgetting certain things, but again, this is one of those ones where there's so much to discuss, and like when I talk with somebody else about this, it's almost like a different sort of rabbit hole. And I don't know if you kind of found that while you have looked into the subject, maybe prior or maybe even during your research for your book, which is Illuminating the Darkness, by the way, the mystery of spook lights. That's just for the listeners.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, a lot of these ghost lights that I've investigated and I've researched, I haven't been to every single one of those ghost lights in my book, but I've been to a vast majority of them when I was, especially here in the United States. And it seems like a lot of these, again, you could almost kind of say that this somewhat is urban legend in some cases. But there have been a lot of these stories that I came across that seem to be tied to a specific instance that may have started it. Give you a good example of the Mako light in North Carolina, sometimes known as Joe Baldwin's light. That actually took place where allegedly there was Joe Baldwin was an engineer, conductor in the train. He was back in the rear of the train. One of the cars from the train became detached. And there was another train coming on the same track, and he got off and he's waving his lantern, trying to ward off the other train. And unfortunately, it didn't happen, and it plowed into the other train. And allegedly, he was decapitated. And so the story began to go from there. That what people are seeing along the train tracks in Mako, North Carolina, is actually the lantern carried by a headless Joe Baldwin looking for his head, which is kind of interesting. If you have no head, how can you look for your head? But these are the kind of stories you often get for possible explanations, and they're very steeply based sometimes in folklore tradition. The interesting thing about this particular light, though, it was actually seen by a president. It was seen by Grover Cleveland when he was stopping in Mako, and he was in the back of the train, and he kind of pointed out to one of his people that was with him, and then I guess one of the conductors overheard him say, "What's that strange light down the coming up behind us?" And he said, "Oh, don't worry, Mr. President, that's just Joe Baldwin's light." So he had actually seen that back in the 1880s or so. I think it's about the time period that he would have been president. And unfortunately, to this day, it hasn't been seen anymore. And the reason being is that I was there back in the 1980s, about 86 or 87, and the train tracks are completely removed. They're gone. Okay, so the environment has changed. And when you change something in the environment, sometimes it either does one of two things. It either irritates what might be there in the form of a spirit and is seen more often, or that it simply just goes away. But you could actually see, the area to the left and to the right as you get up there where these train tracks would have been. And I was able to find a couple of railroad spikes from that train tracks. So I have in my collection, part of my Joe Baldwin collection, so to speak. But we went back there again this year, or tried to get back there this year, and I had just planned way too many things, unfortunately, when I was in Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia, all in like a 5-day span. And we just didn't have the time to get there. And I had a friend with me from England wanted to see it, but I said, well, most likely you're not going to see it because it's never been seen since those train tracks have been removed.
Oh, wow. Well, I'm going to have to look into that too. But as you were talking, I thought you were like, I was almost getting confused because that almost reminds me of the headless brakeman story in Canada, who also was missing a head. And I'm trying to see if I can find it real quick of his little story, but I don't think I'm going to find it in time. But that's exactly what it reminded me of. And I think he like fell though, as I remember the story well enough, that this brakeman was trying to hurry up and he tripped and he basically ended up getting decapitated by the train that was coming. Let me see if I have it right here. Yeah, right here. The legend said that this headless ghost, often with a glowing lantern, roamed the railway track on rainy nights, possibly still searching for his head. In 1928, a brakeman was making repairs on a rail yard track near the Waterfront Station, Canada, when he slipped on a wet rail and was knocked unconscious. And a passenger train approached and ran him over, decapitating him. So that's interesting that North Carolina almost has something similar.
Yeah, there's others actually that I researched for my book. One called the Hookerman Ghost Light, which I believe is in New Jersey. I have not been out to that train track. In fact, I believe, if I remember correctly, my cover design for my book is actually the Hookerman train tracks. And it's the same idea that there was an accident where somebody was decapitated. And the interesting thing about ghost lights that I've come across is that they seem to be associated with either long, narrow slivers of train tracks, long, like roadways, just very rural roadways, cemeteries, or bodies of water. Those are the four things that most people will see spook lights at. I mean, there's been many reports of people seeing ghost lights or spook lights in cemeteries. A very famous one is the one in Silver Cliff, Colorado. I've not been out to that one, but that's been reporting that apparently is still going on of just these blue dancing lights that have been seen inside the cemetery after dark. And I could cite so many examples of cemeteries as well that have this. One, Bachelor's Grove Cemetery in Chicago, very famous haunted cemetery, had for a number of years a kind of a bluish ghost light that was seen along inside the cemetery, and then even what looked like a red ghost light kind of like going down the trail towards the cemetery. And in Chicago, there's a few dozen actually of different reports of spook lights, ghost lights. We have one near Maple Lake, which is a man-made body of water, and that's seen on the far shore of the lake. After dusk, it's a kind of like a red laser beam, kind of like a intensity light that's been seen there. It doesn't show up, unfortunately, with any regularity. So people that go out there, chances are they probably are not going to see that, but there have been reports consistently back from the early 1970s right up through, well, almost present time, of people going out there. It's a forest preserve, so you're really not supposed to be out there after dusk. But people are out there, they're drinking, they're out there with their girlfriends, or they're just out there just sometimes even fishing late at night. And they'll look across the lake, and there's this red light, very pinpoint, a very bright light. And there's absolutely no way to get back there with your car at night. So people are not seeing car headlights, not seeing car taillights. And that's one of when people try to explain ghost lights, that comes up more often than anything else, that it's got to be car headlights or car taillights that people are seeing. The other one that seems to come off quite often is swamp gas. And if you're familiar with swamp gas, phosgene, I think it's called ignis fatuus, or anything that's kind of like a glowy, kind of like light that's given off by decaying wood. That can be seen in swamps, but that's a rare phenomenon. That's not something you would see every night for long periods of time. That would be something that would kind of like maybe glow a little bit and then suddenly just die out, kind of like an ethereal glow, so to speak. It's really kind of creepy if you've ever seen it. I've never seen it, but I have talked to people that have lived near swamps. And some of these people try to say, well, this is just swamp gas, but they don't realize that where these ghost lights are being seen, there's no swamps. So you can't have swamp gas.
Right, yeah. And Vermont, when you go south, like, I don't know how well you know Vermont, but if you go Vermont south toward like Massachusetts, you're going to be running toward like Arlington, Bennington, stuff like that. But from where like I am, you're going to see nothing but swamps and swamps. And then when you finally get to the borderish area, that's when there's more caves and mines. And that's where one of our old like ghost towns is, where it used to be like an old logging road. Then it got turned into like a casino. There is in fact still a cemetery there, but as far as like the railroad track, they aren't there, but they still have some of the old like railroad track nails, if that's the appropriate way to say that.
Spikes or something. Yeah.
Yeah, the spikes.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. So, I guess as far as you mentioned now, just mentioning inside of the cemetery, I'm assuming that's also because, and again, this is just me speculating as well, but because I'm kind of still getting into this Phantom Light thing, but I have heard stories. But would you say it's also maybe because maybe some cemeteries have water underneath? I know some uh, cemeteries have water for whatever, maybe to clean, or maybe some cemeteries may allow like real flowers. But anyway, I guess what I'm trying to say is like for those that may not have water underneath them, would you say that maybe it's actually the gravestones themselves because of the mineral that they're created with?
Um, there's several different possible explanations for why they would appear inside cemeteries. And one of them has been kind of bandied about back and forth that is basically, methane gas being given off by decomposing bodies. But unfortunately, a lot of these people that are buried there, especially in Bachelor's Grove, were buried back in the 1850s or early 1900s. And, their bodies would long have been,
Decayed, yeah.
disintegrated by that time. There's also that idea you mentioned about different minerals inside, certain stones, and that goes into what you might call like a piezoelectrical effect, which is actually caused by, like giving a really good example, during when Mount St. Helens blew its top in Washington, Washington State. There was it's located along a fault line too. On top of that, so these tectonic plates moving that creates the earthquake. Rub against each other, and they create these little bluish dancing lights that are called piezoelectrical effect, and they're caused by in some cases the quartz that are in the stone and other minerals, and they were seen over Mount St. Helens before it blew its top. People were seeing dancing lights on the side of the hill. They had some minor quakes before the big one blew its top, days before, and some of those people that lived, there was a gentleman I think that lived right over there by Crater Lake, or maybe that's not the actual name of it, but there's a lake right by Mount St. Helens, and he refused to leave, and he literally got disintegrated when the pyroclastic cloud came down that mountain and just literally just disintegrated him. But that is something that has been again a possible explanation for these spook lights, but because it is so rare for earthquakes and people to see this piezoelectrical effect. I mean, they even seen it in Brown Mountain, North Carolina, which is a very famous Brown Mountain lights, which I was out there back around '83, and I was out there all night on what was called the Route 181 overlook, which is the best vantage point. And I only saw one very brief ping of light out there the whole time I was out there. So I was a bit disappointed. And I've been back there a couple of times and haven't really seen anything. But those lights were actually seen way back before there were cars. automobiles, and even before some of the trains were later put on the train tracks that went through that area. So again, that idea that it's not car headlights and car taillights or train lights, there was a very, very good investigation done back in the 1920s by the Army Corps of Engineers that went out there. And this one gentleman, he was out there for several nights from different observation points, including the Route 181 overlook, Wiseman's View, Blowing Rock, and there was a hotel near Blowing Rock, which had a good vantage point of the Brown Mountains. And his conclusion later on at the end was that most of what he saw was explainable, but there was 2 to 3% that he could not determine what they were. So those could have been the actual spook lights that people have been seeing out there. But there were, at the time that he was doing it, there were, cars, there were trains going through there. So he said that some of what he was seeing was probably train lights kind of going through along the side of the hill and kind of being, going through the tree line and so forth and kind of flickering as it went by. And but he accounted for a certain percentage that he could not explain, and that's very interesting. And it's one of the more famous spook lights in the country. It's to get to Wiseman's View, which is an outstanding view, but it's a very dangerous little road to get up there. It's kind of washed out on the side. There is no guardrail, and you can barely fit a car and a half going up there. So it's scary during the day, but it's even scarier when you try to go up there at night because you're right on the edge of this like couple of 100-foot drop.
Right. Yeah, that's what I heard. So, and there's, like you said, it's kind of like really hard to see, and that's what I've also heard. Going back to the lights real quick, did they mention that it acted like a motor vehicle, I guess, for lack of, or was it more bobbing up and down like a person with like a lantern or a headlamp?
Yeah, at the Brown Mountain,
Yeah.
or generally speaking, anywhere. But in Brown Mountain, it seemed to be at least the ones that I have the ones that were not car headlights, car tail lights, or trains or something like that. Some of these actually seem to be really have been seen over the ridge. In other words, the mountain's here, and you see the light over the mountain, literally up in the sky. And it's not, it's not a plane or satellite or, Venus or something like that. It's literally something that seems to come up from the nearby town, which is Hickory, Lenore, and Morganton. They're all right in that area. And what I think in that case, there is an explanation for that possible again too. And part of it is due to what they call a temperature inversion layer. In other words, you have the city lights on the other side, but you really can't see when you're looking looking here. The city lights are below the horizon or below the mountain peak, so you really can't see them. But on certain conditions, when you have a temperature inversion layer, it can literally create a method that the lights from city lights can literally be refracted or reflected up through this inversion layer and be seen like they're floating over the mountaintop. That's something that was also discussed in several other locations that I was at. But because you have the mountain range right there, it tends to be something that a lot of people put a lot of credence in because you have the difference in elevation, the difference in temperature. The cold air is supposed to be below the warm air. Sometimes it's the opposite, and that's when you have that mixing in the environment. And in those cases, sometimes they say that it's been explained that you can see something that's really not a ghost light. Is something just simply reflected light from another faraway point.
So almost like you would take like a light, let's just say for the example here that I'm trying to think of, and like you're shining it to let's just say like a mirror or something to bounce off the light. It's kind of like that in a way.
Yeah, I mean, but even more so that, and this is kind of strange because you have a lot of city lights over there. I mean, you have street lights, you have cars going past, you have businesses that maybe not closed yet, and McDonald's or whatever, they're all open over there. But you only see maybe one or two lights, and you would think you would see a whole bunch of lights because you got all the city lights here, and if you got that inversion layer, you would think all of those would be reflected up, and you would see a bunch of pinpoints, and it's usually not more than one or two you see at a time. So, I mean, again, those are explanations that people have for these spook lights. Now, I'm not saying they're all 100% true, because some of them are very, very far-fetched, and also some are extremely rare. Now, ball lightning is something else that people say could be spook lights. Ball lightning is extremely rare. Lightning in the shape of a ball it's been produced in laboratory conditions. People can do it in laboratory conditions, and there's some really good videos if your viewers want to simply Google ball lightning laboratory test or something like that. You'll actually see a really nice video of them charging this area up, with a Tesla coil, and hundreds of thousands of volts of electricity, and all of a sudden you see this ping come off of there. It's like a ball and it floats away. It's really amazing. But that is so rare. I mean, again, you can produce that in laboratories, pretty often, I would think, maybe. But in the environment for that to be taking place outside of a laboratory condition is extremely rare. Now, it's not impossible. People have seen ball lightning, but when you talk about a ghost light, I mean, that's not the same thing. I mean, ball lightning would be something that would be caused by an electrical storm coming in, by instability in the atmosphere, and sometimes when people see these ghost lights, they're very clear nights, so it can't be ball lightning. But there was a gentleman that wrote a book, or at least a paper, about this very famous Joplin spook light in Joplin, Missouri, which is one I've been to about at least 10 times. And he insisted that what people were seeing was ball lightning, and I I tried to convince him it wasn't, but he wrote the book anyway. But the Joplin spook light is something that is truly an amazing phenomenon, at least when it was seen. The last couple of times I was out there, we didn't see anything. That was kind of disappointing, and also, kind of like, kind of make me scratch my head a little bit. Like, all these years I was going out there, and you would see this light literally appear just before dawn. It would still be light out. The sun would be going down over the ridge, and you kind of begin to see these lights appearing on the road, and then it would kind of appear literally all night. I mean, not all night, but in very, very long intervals. I mean, you might have 5 or 6 minutes of seeing something, and maybe 10 minutes of nothing, and then 5 or 6 more minutes, all night long until dawn. And what it looked like was simply a kind of a yellow orangey ball of light, and people say it was roughly the size of a soccer ball, roughly, that was seen along the road. When you look at the topography of the area for the Joplin spook light, you're looking at what's called E50, which is what they call Spook Light Road. And then you have, so E50 goes this way, and behind it is the state line. So basically, when you're looking at the light is actually appearing in Oklahoma and not Missouri, because it's actually in Oklahoma. You're standing in Missouri. And if you walk over the state line road, then you're automatically in Oklahoma. So this light has been seen by me. I have videotape of this light. I have some great pictures that I took with time-lapse film out there, 35 millimeter. I also had a very, very strange incident one evening. I was out there with several other researchers, and we all had very high-powered binoculars, and we were just going down the road. At that time, it was kind of a gravel road, so it made a lot of noise and it stirred up a lot of dust. So you had to kind of go slow so you didn't destroy your field of vision. And we saw this light, and it wasn't on the road per se. It was off the road, which was unusual, and it was near a barn. And the light was so bright that at first I thought the barn was on fire. And that's how bright it was. So we were watching this light, and everybody, you stopped to get out of the car. I said, look at that. So we were all looking through the binoculars. And suddenly, this light kind of went down behind the hill, or a little bit of a ridge right there. And when it went down, it left behind, the best way to explain it would be kind of a twinkling kind of phosphorescent effect. It left behind like a whole bunch of fireflies, but they weren't fireflies, twinkling for a few seconds and then dissipated. And they all went out at the same time. So, and I go, wow, that's pretty weird. And not only that, the light wasn't a ball of light like it had been described, but it was a diamond-shaped object that had a hollow center that you could see trees and bushes through this hollow center. Now, I saw this, and I didn't say, hey, and I didn't tell the other people what I had seen. I said, what are you guys seeing? And they told me the same thing that I was seeing, that it was a diamond-shaped object, hollow center, very bright. When I later on described this to a professional psychic I was working with for my ghost investigations, she said that she believed, in her psychic opinion, that we were in great danger, because that could have been a doorway or portal to some other dimension. You hear about vortexes and portals. I believe Joplin, Missouri is a portal haunting. But after it went down behind this hill, we're waiting for it to come back up. It doesn't. So we got in the car. We start creeping up the hill very, very slowly, maybe 5-6 miles an hour. And roughly in the middle of the road, this thing comes up behind a hill about 60 feet away from us. And it sits there, and it's like pulsating, and then it goes down behind the hill, again, leaves behind that twinkling effect. And we're waiting for it to come up. Got at the top of the hill maybe 15, 20 seconds later, and whatever it was about 2 miles down the road. It had gotten from here to there in an instant. And I don't know. I've never been able to explain this. I don't know what it is. I've never seen a light like this ever in any of my research or my field trips. And unfortunately, we didn't have, back then, I think there was no night shot cameras when we went out there. This was Labor Day weekend of 1982. It was long before they had night shot cameras. We went back to, of course, later on when we had that capability, when we also had a capability of flare cameras and other types of devices under very low light conditions. And we were able to capture some video and some very good still pictures of this light. Now, this light apparently was actually caught by a professional photographer for the Joplin Globe newspaper. There was a reporter named Martha Churchwell who was out there in the 1980s, and it's a very common thing that people like to talk about around Halloween. It's a spooky place, and people would go out there and sit there, and they would they'd have their lunch out there, they'd have dinner out there, they'd grab some burgers and some beers, and they'd watch this light all night on the road. She was out there with a professional photographer for an article, and she had set up a camera on a tripod, and she snapped the picture. And when they got the film back, it was amazing, because you see the ball of light, and then you see something shooting off into the woods. So in reality, they probably missed it. Maybe it was so fast. This light, whatever it was, split off and shot into the woods. And I have that photograph. It's an amazing photograph. It's in my book on the spook light phenomena. I have never seen that happen before, at least to a photographer. I have heard about eyewitnesses seeing the light splitting off, because I was out there one evening and there was a ton of people. They brought on their patio furniture. They were sitting along the road. They were looking at the light. It was a family thing. And it's hard for me to grasp the idea, but I mean, I believe that light was almost intelligent in some fashion, because back then when people would turn their lights off and they'd creep up the hill, you'd hear the gravel crunching, and then this thing would just get like paranoid and just wink out or disappear. When I was there, it was really bright down the road. So I said, well, I'm got to be pretty close to it. So as I'm creeping, and I'm walking up there actually, and there were some cars further back, and they had their lights off, and they're kind of creeping, and I get a better look. And the people that were sitting in the lounge chairs when I got up there told me that, because I lost track of it for a second, the road is like a series of little hills. So you're at the bottom of the hill, you might not see it until you get near the top of that little hill. But they said that this light, or whatever it was, initially was rolling on the ground and kind of like spitting off pieces of itself, like this phosphorescent effect all over and up and down the road. And I wish I would have been able to see that myself, but I just missed it by maybe no more than about a few minutes. And then it suddenly rose up, they said, about 12 feet off the ground, and shot in the woods in both directions, and was gone.
Oh my God. Wow.
So this light, when this light is there and it's visible, it's probably, in my opinion, the best example of a ghost light, and an observable ghost light that people can actually see, photograph, watch, videotape, so forth. But unfortunately, in the last few years, it's been kind of like hit or miss whether or not it's going to be out there or not. But it is an amazing thing to see.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so Dale, I want to go back to a few things that you said just to kind of clarify too, just in case I did miss it. So going back to the barn, when you said it almost looked like it was on fire, so I'm assuming that was an orange light then?
It was kind of like an orangey, kind of yellowish light, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then from the barn to the hill, how far apart were them before it took off to, like you were saying, 2 miles away from that area?
Well, when we first saw it, in this it's kind of like a little holler. That we were at, and we were kind of looking up towards this barn area, and it was like in front of the barn, and like I said, you could see through it.
Oh, gotcha.
The barn. So then the barn was probably, I would say, maybe 100 feet off the road, something like that, give or take.
Right.
And so for it to travel from the barn to where we saw it coming up on the road, it wouldn't have been very far for it to suddenly appear in front of us.
Right. Okay. And then you were mentioning the photographs, which you captured, which you said you have it. I don't have the book, unfortunately, to see it for myself. So I guess the way I'm trying to ask this, just in case too, is like, so would this photograph that we captured, was it almost like a do I want to say like a beam of light, or like a oh God, I'm losing the train of thoughts here. Of like maybe like a ball of light falling from the sky or something, but it's like shooting off kind of thing.
Well, throughout that weekend we were out there. We were out there for 3 days, Memorial Day weekend, 1982, and we were out there every night from literally from dusk until dawn. We were getting back around 4 o'clock in the morning, getting back to our hotel and just getting some hours of sleep and then going back out there again. And the pictures that I took, well, first of all, the video I took is it just looks like a kind of like a white light almost to me, kind of whitish, kind of maybe pale yellow. And I had my camera zoomed in to the maximum that I could, because otherwise you would have probably only seen like a little tiny pinpoint of light in the darkness. So I had to zoom in to the maximum. And unfortunately, it was a handheld video because it just suddenly popped up and I didn't even have the chance to get it on the tripod. So I'm trying to hold it as steady as I can, but I'm moving it a little bit. So the light's not doing all this. That's just me with the camera a little bit. But it was pretty amazing. And the way it disappeared was even crazier, because instead of just a light disappearing like that, it slowly faded out and then it was gone. And it did this several times where it looked like it was getting dimmer and dimmer and dimmer and dimmer, and then it was just gone. And that happened several times, not only that weekend, but other times when we were out there to observe the light, even through binoculars. We had some really good binoculars. In fact, I even brought a 4-inch reflecting telescope out there one year, and I had purchased a camera mount so I could take pictures through the telescope with my 35 millimeter camera. But unfortunately, it drizzled pretty much almost the whole weekend, and I couldn't bring the telescope out because it would get water droplets on the mirror, and then it would be real a pain to try to get those washed off or whatever. So we couldn't use that, unfortunately, but we brought it out there as a possibility to do that. When I took the pictures, and I have some really, really good pictures that from the road, just using a 35 millimeter color film, and using kind of a long exposure, maybe a few seconds, because I was using 400 speed film, 400 ASA, which is pretty fast film. And you kind of see this orange ball, kind of a pale orange ball, just kind of sitting on the roadway, and you can see the silhouette of cars and the road and the trees very, very well, because it was a perfect exposure. It wasn't just a light and darkness. You could see around it, you could see the road, you could see the tree line, you could see the cars alongside the road and everything. And this light is just looks like it's just sitting on the road. And again, the light in that area. Now there is a highway that goes. You got Spook Light Road going this way, and you got another highway kind of going this direction, which is Route 40, which is an interstate. However, again, going to the topography of the area, which we checked out, we wanted the elevations for everything. You would not be able to see the cars from Route 40 because they would be below the horizon. Spook Light Road has a higher elevation than this. So there's no way you would have been able to see that unless you go by the theory that, again, temperature inversion layer somehow reflected them out there, but not every single night. This wouldn't have happened. And we tried so many experiments. We actually have a huge map that we put together, and it actually showed that this road, Spook Light Road, goes 2.5 miles from the Missouri-Oklahoma border, and then makes a sharp left angle turn, and then goes that direction. So what we were looking at here was looking like down 2.5 miles, and there were instances where we actually had seen cars, real cars, coming down, because you can go through binoculars and you can say, oh, there's two lights here. Oh, it's a car. And so you can see a car coming towards you. But as this car was coming towards us, above the car was the spook light. You could see this light above the car, quite different in configuration and brightness and hue. It was quite different.
Not to interrupt you, Dale, but
Sure.
I just wanna ask too, so because of this car thing, and I don't know if it was around that time yet. I kind of forget sometimes, but you know how like they have the portable spotlight that you can connect into your cigarette lighter or whatever, and you can like kind of mount them on your car. It
Yeah.
wasn't something like that, right?
No, no. I mean, again, if there would have been somebody coming down that road, you would think they'd probably have their headlights on anyway. I would think. I don't think I ever saw anybody ever during our investigations ever come down with a spotlight attached to their thing. Now, we actually brought a 2 million candle power spotlight ourselves to plug into the cigarette lighter, and I had one car go all the way to the end of the 2.5 mile road and shine it back towards us. And it looked a little similar, but it was simply white. And you could tell by looking at it that it was an incandescent light rather than whatever this light was made out of.
Okay, so that brings up another question then. So from what you were seeing of this spook light to this test that you were just doing, was it dimmer than the spook light then? I know
Yeah,
you said
the spook light would have been a bit dimmer than
okay.
than the 2 million candle power spotlight, because I mean that you can literally see that from about 5 miles away. That light is so. If you were to go on a long, uninterrupted view, a 5 mile view, and you turned it on 5 miles away, you would see that light. It's that bright.
Wow.
In fact, we actually used that light to debunk another spook light in Indiana, which I can talk about in a little bit, called the Moody light. And that we debunked that light as being car headlights and taillights.
Okay. Would that is that the one that was like a reflection?
Well, no, the Moody light is in Rensselaer, Indiana. And the story behind that is now again, could be probably folklore, but it was Farmer Moody. He had a farm, and there's several stories. Either his girls got lost at night, the Indians got the girls, or some bad people got the girls, or whatever, and they were kidnapped. And so Farmer Moody came out there with his lantern looking for his girls. He never found them, and the light you see is supposedly the light from Farmer Moody.
Still looking for them, I'm assuming then.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
So basically, I mean, he would have passed now, okay, but he's still looking for his girls, and that light you can easily detect through when you first see it, as it diffuses quite nicely within binoculars into two lights, so you can say, well, okay, there you go. It's simply headlights, and that's all we were seeing pretty much the whole time we were there. Now, one of the stories behind the light is if you sit on that road, and it's supposed to be an old tree that used to was kind of the landmark, but now it's only a tree stump, and you kind of turn all your car headlights off, and then you flash your bright lights 3 times, and then it suddenly appears. Now, I actually did a segment for a company called Mystery, Magic, and Miracles, and it was actually Patrick McNee was actually the host of the show from the Avengers, and this James Romanovich, who was the producer, he was the producer of that show, but then he also did a show of the Moody light, and he did the same thing. He went out there, he flicked the lights 3 times, and then suddenly you see this light suddenly appear down the road. But if you again look at the topography of the area, you're looking down a road and you're having a road come at an angle. So eventually you'll see the light, and all of a sudden you won't see the light because it'll get out of your line of perspective. And you can watch that light. You can see those cars coming down that road all night and doing the same thing. So that one was pretty easily debunked. We went back there last year and the year before, we had multiple people. In fact, we had we saw it from just a very slightly different angle, actually, but it's the same angle. So basically, you're looking down the road, you see the cars come towards you, and then they turn off. So suddenly it looks like they disappear, but really all they did has turned off. Now, if you're looking, so we had one car at the observation point. I sent the other car across. You had to go. This is a big cornfield in front of us. So you have to go all the way around to get on the other side and come towards us. And I said, every so often we had two-way radio. I said, flash your bright lights. And we could see it very clearly from where we were at. So I said, now put your bright lights on and keep them on, and then make the turn to your right. And sure enough, it did the same thing everybody was seeing. Comes towards you, really bright, turns and disappears. So that's, that was pretty easily debunked. We also debunked another one in Watersmeet, Michigan, called the Paulding Light.
Before we get into that one, Dale, I'll go back to the barn light one if it was the same one. The one where it was the same one where it split into two, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I guess my last question about that one, real quick, and then you can proceed on with this one because I'm curious about this one now. But anyway, so the one that split into two, how can we say that it wasn't just one and then it split, or was it like we hear about like UFOs or whatever where sometimes multiple ones will kind of look like it's one and then split off. So
Yeah.
how can we say it wasn't multiple, or was it just one, I guess?
Yeah, we really can't say. I mean, I really couldn't say, to be totally honest with you. All I will know is that the photograph that Martha, the Joplin Gold photographer, took from Martha Churchwell, you clearly see this big ball, okay,
Mm-hmm.
and then you suddenly see a streak coming from it, and at the end a smaller ball. Now, I mean, because she had it on a time lapse, so she basically had it on a tripod, and she kind of, snapped it and kept it open for, several seconds, because it's pitch dark out there. You wouldn't be able to overexpose the film pretty much, unless someone came over the hill and hit you with the bright lights, and then it'd be, toast. But I think she told me that when they were out there, they didn't actually see that light split, but they got it on the camera. And that's something that I've seen and I've experienced at other spook light locations where I didn't see the light, but yet I was able to photograph it. And that happened at multiple locations.
And you know what? Well, this will actually wrap this one up nice too, because you already mentioned you had a video of it and now photos of it. You also hear sometimes that it's very hard to capture this phenomenon really on anything, from what I hear. Would you agree with that?
Yes and no, depending on which spook light you're looking at. If you're looking at the Joplin spook light back from like 1980s through maybe the mid 1990s, I mean, if you were out there, it was out there. And if you had a camera, you could probably capture it pretty easily. One thing we noticed, though, is when we were on the other side, we were in Missouri looking into Oklahoma. We were literally on the county line road, the state line road. Sometimes, if you set up a camera or a video machine, tape machine on a tripod, you didn't always see the light, even though it was being seen, and that's kind of strange because I think it's because of the topography of the area. If you got up too low, you couldn't see over the hill. You had to be up a little bit higher to see over the hill. So sometimes people were saying they were seeing, and I say, well, where? I'd have to go down like maybe 10, maybe a couple feet further down, and oh yeah, there it is. But I couldn't see it looking, standing straight up, erect, and looking down, the road there. And I mean, that light has been seen literally. There's a cow pasture right next to that intersection there. And there was a gentleman that used to run a museum called the Spook Light Museum. His name was Garland Middleton, but everybody called him Spooky Middleton. And he had pictures of the light. He had a little free museum. He would give away like soda pop for free. He had binoculars that he would give everybody a chance to look through for 10 cents a peek, something like that. He wasn't trying to make money, but he had seen the light so many times. He had told me that there was one instance that this light was literally seen moving amongst the cattle in the in the cow pasture, and the cattle just kind of looked at it and didn't pay much attention to it, like it wasn't there at all. And I mean, it would get really close. It would be far away. It apparently travels at a pretty incredible speed when it wants to get away from somebody or some viewer or something. If you're getting too close, it's just like it's gone. Whether it's going in through just moving very, very quickly down the road, or if it's actually going into some sort of portal or interdimensional doorway and then popping up somewhere else down the road. Because of that, the sighting that I saw to this day, I can't explain. But it would be consistent to other stories I'd heard of other locations, and not just spook lights, but just haunted buildings, haunted locations, where there have been so-called portal hauntings.
Okay. So, man, you're opening up questioning for me now, stuff. So, man, so okay, I guess I should ask this just because now I'm curious. So, the last person I talked with about spook lights, his name was Ronald Murphy Jr. He was part of a documentary thing, and I don't know if you're familiar with Small Town Monsters, but they tried to do like a Phantom Light documentary. He was part of it. One of the guys that were part of this documentary, I guess, it wasn't on this documentary per se, as far as I'm aware. I don't think it was, but he did mention though how he had an experience where the spook light got so close to him that he was able to try to reach out with his hand. But once he did that, it like not just vanished, but it also erupted his retina. I don't know if you've heard any type of or have any stories regarding people getting harmed by these things because they were too close.
No, actually, I not that I've come across. I mean, the one that comes to mind is the one that was seen in Bachelor's Grove Cemetery, first seen in 1971 by a Joliet man named Jack Hermansky. He said he saw this blue light, pulsating blue light in the cemetery. He was by himself, pretty brave. It's the middle of nowhere, and he's out there by himself. And he sees this pulsating thing, maybe about the size of a 16-inch soccer ball or softball or something like that. And he would go out and he would try to reach out to touch it, and it would just weak out. It would disappear. And so then he kind of looked around and he turned around, and it's like right behind him. It's like right behind him. So he turns around and he does the same thing. He tries to reach out to touch it, and it disappears. And he said he did this for several minutes, off and on, back and forth, was never able to get from maybe a couple of feet away before it would disappear, before he would reach his hand up. Now, a year later, there was a woman named Denise Travers who came out there in 1972. And she was with a group of friends, I assume. And she saw the same type of phenomenon, this blue, pulsating blue light, which hasn't been seen in many years, by the way. But she reached out to touch it, and she said her hand went right through this light. She was able to put her hand through the light. She said she felt no heat, no cold, no sensation at all. It was like putting her hand through nothing. Now, as soon as she did that, it kind of like dissipated, and and it was a one-time thing. As different with Jack Hermansky, he was chasing this thing all night. It was like almost that she had disrupted the integrity of this spook light, whatever it was made of. And now I assume that, first of all, it's light, obviously. It's a visible light. I also assume that there has to be an energy of some kind, and it's most likely electrical, electric or electromagnetic. We went
And
out
that's
there.
actually, oh, sorry, Dale. I was just going to say, and that's one thing I wanted to actually bring up too, or because we kind of mentioned it before, which is, did any of the people mention, like, it almost felt like, as we mentioned before, they felt maybe electricity in the air, or was it nice and, like nice, calm weather, I guess. I guess I don't really know a good way to put it, like non-electrical feel.
Right. I mean, there have been some that have picked up kind of like a like when you go across the floor on a carpet and you touch something and you zap yourself. I mean, they have that kind of feeling, kind of like a charging on their arms, and maybe their hair will stand up on the back of their neck, and their hair will stand up on their arm. That's happened to me a few times at different locations. So that's usually caused by static electricity, which again is electricity nonetheless, and it's a measurable energy because we actually have a static field detector, a negative ion detector that we bring along that can actually pick up. And it's so sensitive that literally you can turn this device on, you can take a comb and comb hair a couple times and it'll set it up just by the static electricity. So it's very, very
handy. Yeah.
Very handy. And also we bring out other gauge meters or EMF detectors, which pick up not only, will pick up more of electromagnetic energy, which is the combination of the two. And there are places along the Spook Light Road where we literally felt, for lack of a better term, kind of a zone of fear. And I go back because if you remember John Keel with the Mothman prophecies in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, the Mothman, I was there actually, and
oh wow,
John Keel went out there in '67. And he went down past this old TNT factory where they saw these red glowing eyes, and supposedly this Mothman is there. And it was broad daylight, and he parked his car, and he was walking, and all of a sudden he walked into what he could describe as a zone of fear. It was like an anxiety attack. And the same thing happened to me along Spook Light Road in that holler I was talking about. The last time it didn't happen, but the time before that, it was the weirdest feeling. It was kind of a fight or flight fear. You wanted to just either fight or just run. And so I kind of backed out of it, and I was fine. I walked back into it. It happened again. And so that is an area. Now, I don't know how to explain that. I mean, is it something that the environment is charged, or is it caused by the spook light, or is it like a portal or something? I really don't know. I mean, as a scientist, I can't explain it. I'm not a I don't have enough expertise to explain what this could have been, but it did have physical sensations on your body. And I never got hurt, but I mean, I got an anxiety attack, and other people with me that evening also felt the same thing.
Right, and I can't think of the term right now, but I can. Maybe you can help me here if you know what I'm trying to get at. But we also hear this type of phenomena with cryptid, especially with Bigfoot, where there's that weird field like you can step in and step out of. Wow, it's my brain is farting on what they call that, but yeah, that's exactly the same thing. They can step in and out, and they can feel like dread all over them, and then they can take a couple steps right back out, and they're fine.
Yeah. Well, like I said, the Joplin Road to me is a classic example of a portal haunting, because it's not just the spook light that people see, the physical sensations that they feel, but there have been there was a very rare magazine that I was able to pick up back in the 1980s, and it talks about other things that happened there, including UFO sightings, also some sort of cryptid or type of Bigfoot type creature, hairy creatures that were seen, and even people that lived very close to that road claimed that they had either hauntings and or poltergeist phenomena going on at the same time. So this whole gamut of stuff happening in a very small area, and then all of a sudden it would happen like, I don't know, for days or weeks, and then suddenly like the door closes and nothing happens. And there are so many examples. I gave a presentation on what I call portal hauntings that besides Bachelor's Grove and the Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and the Joplin, Missouri. I mean, there was just several of these areas that multiple things happen to eyewitnesses or residents in the area over a period of time, and they would call them, in UFO terminology, you would call it a flap, where they would have a huge amount of UFO activity suddenly, and then bam, it just flatlines and there's nothing there anymore. And that happens along somebody's location. So I often wonder if what we're also experiencing here isn't some sort of, for lack of a better term, almost a rip in the fabric of time and space.
Yeah.
Which is scary. It's just scary. But yet it's fascinating to experience, though. You know, as long as you're not in any type of danger, I guess.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And going back to that documentary that I mentioned, in which for your sake, just in case you've never heard of it, but yeah, it's by Small Town Monsters. They call it The Phantom Light. It's a documentary, like I said, on YouTube. It's free to watch. I can send you it afterward, Dale, if you would like.
Yeah.
And one other thing they mentioned too, besides this person getting hurt, but the main director of this documentary at some point started to feel ill, kind of like sickly, and he even felt unbalanced. So the fact that you're actually sharing these, saying like these people just were okay, it's interesting to hear that, because it doesn't seem like if these are intelligent life, which I do agree, some of these have to be intelligent for what they do, but you know, it almost seems like maybe wherever you are, maybe region-wide might be a better term for this, but it seems like they might have their own defense, I guess. Like maybe they're used to people, maybe they're not used to people, kind of thing. Kind of like with animals and humans, you know. Sometimes we got to build trust in order to, like I can give an example. Like Dale, you and I did it the first time we're talking to each other. You know, I gotta gain your trust, just like, you know, you gotta gain my trust, type of thing. And if we feel off about it, then yeah, you know, we're gonna part ways. Same with, you know, meeting animals. You're either going to get bit or you're not going to get bit. So I almost feel like the light, depending on where you are, has its own relationship with the land, if that even makes sense.
And I think it may also have a lot to do with what's in the environment.
That too.
I mean, are there electric lines nearby? Are there high tension power lines that would feed into this effect? Is there a fault? Because there actually, believe it or not, there is a fault in Missouri called the New Madrid fault line, which we actually experienced a minor tremor in my area probably about 20 some years ago. Of course, I was asleep. I never felt a thing.
That's what happened to me.
Yeah. So, I mean, that could be something too. It could be the frequency of what you're experiencing. I mean, maybe it's not as intense as it was in one that you're talking about, where the guy had his eye problems. Maybe it wasn't as intense as it is here someplace else. I mean, there's so many different variables and factors involved in from place to place to place that, I mean, they're all similar type phenomena, but not always similar experiences.
Yeah, that makes sense. You know what? Since you opened up the worm a few times, I guess I'm gonna dive into it too, which is portals. So, you know, I can go into this for like a little bit, and then everything else. But so could again, I call this another rabbit hole, or yeah, whatever you want to call it, portal hole, whatever you call. What was it? Haunting, portal haunting. Was that how
Portal
you worded
hunting,
it?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So going back to that story, or the eyewitness that you were mentioning that saw these lights around cemeteries. Again, I'm just gonna just open it up now, which is so one interesting cryptid that has now also crossed my eyes. I've heard about it, but now I'm like really stepping foot more into the cryptid white kind of thing, um, which is Dogman. We hear sometimes the Dogmen are seen around cemeteries. Same with these lights. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is there maybe a connection there with these things? Did this person just see spook lights, nothing else? Which that would be amazing. And then we can also go into now you mentioning UFOs and stuff. I mean, I forget where it started. Maybe you can tell me, but people think somehow UFOs and Bigfoot, Sasquatch, whatever you want to call them, are somehow even connected to UFOs. So I guess what I'm trying to ask you is, what is your opinion on these theories? I guess.
Well, I mean, there. I've been to places where there have been dog creatures, dogmen, and cryptids. One in Indiana, one probably the more famous one, the Beast of Bray Road in Wisconsin. We actually investigated that, and we actually caught something on a flare camera of a upright hairy thing that came out of the cornfield. And when we shined a spotlight back at it, it was still showing up on the FLIR. So it was apparently something in a different frequency. It wasn't on a visible frequency. It was something that more like the body heat from the FLIR picked it up, nothing else. But I think that some of these cryptids would kind of fit into that same avenue as kind of Bigfoot would be, or the Yeti, the Momo, the Missouri Monster, even in some cases maybe even lake monsters kind of fit into all that, because they're all would be under the same term of cryptozoology. So there, I think that it's entirely feasible that these things are interdimensional. A very good example of that being the guy who owns the Bray Road Farm, Lee Hampel, showed us pictures the first time we were there in the snow of tracks, and they appeared to be almost wolf-like in appearance, but they weren't on fours, they were on twos. They were walking upright. You see them walking, and then all of a sudden, in the middle of this field with snow, suddenly the footprints stop. They don't go to the left, they don't go to the right, they don't go back, they don't go forward. They just stop. Where did that thing disappear to? Did it disappear into a portal, into an interdimensional doorway? I can't explain that. I mean, I looked at the photographs. They're extremely convincing. I do have copies of those photographs, and they're very convincing. They just stop in the middle of the cornfield, and covered with snow. No way for that to leave without making more tracks.
Oh my God, Dale! I think you solved the mystery for me, because I've heard about this story, and I think this is the same one. So this was from Bray Road, or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
I forget.
Wisconsin.
So, because this is the example I keep bringing up to people, is the snow, because I remember the story being snow. So this must be what I'm thinking of every time I bring that example up. So I appreciate you for sharing that, because that just confirmed and now tells me where this story actually comes from. So I appreciate that. Yeah, that's why I've defined, like, it's I don't even know how to even begin with this. Like, if it is flesh and blood, then how come? And that's how I bring up the example is then why do these footprints just disappear, especially in snow? And most of the time, from what I get told, is well maybe they're re-following the tracks back.
Yeah, but if you did that, you would see a double print more or less on there. And I mean, they're very, very, very clearly that they're just moving, and all of a sudden they stop. I mean, what did a helicopter come over and pick it up and take it away? Was it a UFO? Was it a doorway? I mean, who knows what it was?
Right. Yeah.
But speaking of documentaries, I mean, the one documentary you should try to find is one called "A Light at the End of the Road," which was produced about the Joplin spook light. And I was able to get a copy of that. I don't know if it's still available, but you can try to Google it. It's called "The Light at the End of the Road."
End of the road or end of the tunnel?
End of the road.
Oh, yep. Yeah.
I haven't looked it up in a long time. I bought this probably 20 years ago, maybe, so it may not still be there. But in fact, I even got it on VHS, so it shows you how long ago it was. It's pretty old thing. I wanted to get it transferred to DVD eventually because VHS tapes eventually they start to break down. The media, the magnetic recording tape starts to lose its resonance, and it doesn't play very well afterwards.
Yeah, I'm finding this like 2009 drama one, which I don't think that's the one.
No, this goes back probably at least 20 years, if not more.
Yeah, I'll try to do some digging because right now the only one that's being brought up is the 2009 one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll try to do some digging.
Yeah, it was a pretty decent one that I remember. It wasn't I won't say a real professional job, but it was a good job putting this stuff together about the spook light.
Yeah, I'll try to do my best, see what I can dig up.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I'm trying to figure out. So yeah, that kind of confirms that. I guess if you still have time, Dale, because I don't know how much longer you would like to talk, but you wanted to bring up that one other spook light there from Michigan, was it?
Yeah, Upper Peninsula, Michigan. It's called the Paulding Light.
Yes.
When I first heard about it, it was called the Watersmeet Ghost Light. Again, certain towns wanted to claim the spook light for themselves. In the instance of the Joplin light, Joplin, Seneca, Hornet, and Neosha all want to claim it as their own. They're all 4 neighboring little towns. Well, not so big. Some are very tiny, like the Hornet and the Seneca, but the other 2 cities are pretty big. Here in for the Paulding light or this Watersmeet light, they're both fairly decent sized cities, and that light was first told to me by people that were in my group, and they said, "Well, I'll tell you right now, it's definitely car headlights and car taillights, but there's a lot of folklore and legend." And I said, "Well, that's okay. I still like to make a trip just to check it out for myself and to go into folklore and legend, which I love, because folklore and legends, they start from somewhere. Somebody starts a folklore, a legend, an old wives' tale, and then maybe they add on to it throughout the years and throughout the decades, and it becomes nothing like the original story." So anyway, this light has been seen coming down from a top of a hill, not too far away from a cemetery, believe it or not, and down Route 45. There's 45 and there's Old 45, and the Old 45 is just about maybe a couple hundred feet to the west of the 45, which is the main road. So the observation point is a location called Robbins Pond Road. And in fact, when we went there, we went to a restaurant and they had placemats, and the placemat said, "While in Watersmeet, visit this mystery light. And they gave directions how to get there. It showed a map where to park and so forth. And we already knew this, but I said, can I get a couple of these to take home, these placemats? So I got a couple of these, and they're very hard to find. But anyway, you park there at Robbins Pond Road, and you see this light coming down the hill. And sometimes it changes from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. Sometimes it changes from white to red, from red to white. And so we were there for a whole weekend, and we did everything from topographical maps and elevation. We talked to eyewitnesses. We talked to forest rangers. We located a guy named Bill Kingsley, who had sent me some interesting photographs he had taken out there to see where he was taking those photographs from. And we did our own experimentation. So we figured, because the people that had brought me up here said it was most likely car headlights and taillights. So we went by that assumption at first that it could be something natural. And so we did some stopwatch tests, cars coming down the hill and passing by the Robbins Pond Road over here, and how long it would take from when you first saw the lights until they went past you. So we did stopwatches for about a dozen cars to get an average amount of time from there to there at an average speed of 55 miles an hour. So we made it came down to so many seconds and blah, blah, blah. So almost any time we would see a light, we could say, okay, 50 seconds later it's going to pass. There it is. It just passes right there. We were doing that all night. I said, okay, well, that might not be good enough proof for people. So I told my brother, take my car up the hill, way up the hill, and then turn around and then come down the hill, and every 5 seconds, flash your bright lights off and on. Flash, 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 flash. And I'm videotaping it down at the observation point, and sure enough, comes a car, all of a sudden, bright, dim, bright, dim, bright, dim, and it's the same path that all these lights were apparently being seen. So we debunked it as being car headlights and taillights. Now, people said, well, how can you explain the red and the blue shift? Well, okay, when you look at a long, narrow road that seems to go on for infinity, if you notice your perspective, the roads almost seem like they kind of merge way in the distance. So if you have a car that's going away from you up the hill with red tail lights in the right lane, and then the left lane, you have a car coming down with white headlights, the white car is going to be closer to you, so it's actually going to look like it changes from red to white. See what I'm saying? It goes right in front of it. And that's exactly what was taking place. And the idea that it went to 2s and 4s, well, that was with the naked eye. If you look at it with binoculars, you would see it was 2 headlights, 2 tail lights, or 2 cars, or 2 cars going one direction, 2 cars going the other direction. So we basically debunked it as simply car headlights and taillights, as we did with the Moody light. Now, there have been some others that we went to recently that I haven't had a chance to do much investigating with. We went to Georgia. We saw the Screven ghost light. That was in the middle of nowhere. I wish we would have had more time. We could have set up. We had cameras and everything to set up. It was very, very rural area out in the middle of cornfields. It was perfect observation. That is interesting because I had a camera set up and I took some photographs, and I didn't see anything. When I got back, one of my photographs shows a light in the middle of the railroad tracks.
Interesting.
Same kind of thing like when I was saying when you in Joplin and you look a certain way, you can see it, and you crouch down, you can't see it, or so forth. It's perspective. It's the topography of the area. So I have to look at that more carefully. I have that image. I have to put it into one of my software programs that I use to analyze ghost photographs and see if I can lighten it up and see if there's a car attached to that light, or if it's simply a disembodied light that's just floating up there. But
Wow. Well, that's crazy. And while you've been talking, I've been trying to do some digging again for this documentary. I found a few others, but I don't know. The one that you're speaking of, was it based on or around Missouri and Oklahoma, or
Yeah, I would say so. I would say so. Um, I mean, I can look for you when we go off if you want, and I could go over and dig it out real fast for you. Um,
Yeah, well, the reason why I'm asking is because I found one on Tubi. I just don't know what the year is, unfortunately, but this is called Into the Light, an exploration of the spook light phenomena. But down underneath for like the little, plot, it says researchers unpack the truth behind the mysterious lights observed between Missouri and Oklahoma that have baffled scientists for over a century. There's that one, and then I see another one where um I don't really know the title of this, but it looks like it's from the Joblin Globe. And this one talking about a spook light spotlight. There's a documentary featuring the something involving the Hornet, and then I can't really see what else it says.
yeah,
But
that's
Hornet.
another. Like I said, it's sometimes called the Hornet Spook Light. So that's
Okay.
another small town that's right there. They call it the Hornet, the Joplin, the Osha, the Seneca. They sometimes even call it the Tri-State Spook Light. So
Yeah,
there's all different names to it, but I've always said, just called it the Joplin Spook Light because it's the largest of the four cities.
that makes sense. Yeah, that's all I got for you, really. Unfortunately, because I mean, otherwise there's one from 2018, which that can't be right. That can't be as recent as you're saying. So,
No,
yeah, yeah. Well, all right, Dale. Well, maybe we should just put a pause on our chat for now. That way, people can observe all this now, just like me. I need to go back and listen to this again because there's so much stuff here. But I figured I'd want to reach out to you because, like I said, when I saw your biography and saw how long you've been, doing this, I was just like, I have to see if you would be interested because you would know you've been doing this for so long that it would just be interesting to see or hear some of the similarities or differences. And from this conversation alone, I've already learned like there definitely seems to be something going on, whether it be in this region or this region, because if people are getting hurt by these things and some aren't, then yeah, what's going on with that? I guess I don't even have a good answer for that.
yeah. The last thing I would probably say is that I mean, if we were able to measure some of these electromagnetic fields with some of our equipment. I don't know if in the case of the people that got hurt, if they had any type of meters like that would have indicated what had caused it or so forth. But usually, electromagnetic fields, unless they're extremely high, really extremely high, I mean, in the hundreds of milligauss, wouldn't probably explode your eyes. Because I've actually been into a location where one of my EMF meters had a 237 milligauss reading, but the only thing I got was a pounding headache, which is basically what you call EMF hypersensitivity, where you can actually get headaches, skin irritations, rashes, and even in some cases hallucinate at the extremely high fields. I mean, this is something that's been studied, and that's why some of these devices that people use for hunting ghosts and so forth really were meant to be used for the purpose of detecting high EMF fields in your home that might be dangerous, and then how then for you to fix that where you weren't in any danger. So like some of the early Gauss meters, the K2 meters, um, you know, things of that nature. They weren't initially coming out to be ghost hunting gear. They were coming out to be simply to detect strong fields inside of a home, or microwave leakages from your microwave, or you know uh, um, short circuits, or um, arcs in some of your electrical wiring systems, stuff like that. So,
Right. And do I want to also add, because of some of the things that you were talking about, would that be some form of like what would they call that, like a microwave radiation, or however that works? Maybe
yeah, it could be microwave. It could be, I mean, radio waves. I mean, I have a device.
maybe
I have a tri-field natural EM meter that picks up electrical, magnetic, electromagnetic, radio, and microwave. And the microwave is the dangerous one,
yeah,
because that's the one that'll fry you a little bit. That's why those devices were meant to, in case you had a microwave oven and you could put it next to it and it showed that it was leaking, then you should get rid of that thing and buy a new one. But I mean, as far as light sources, I mean, obviously the UV light is the more dangerous than the infrared light, because the UVA and UVB, that's what causes blindness when you look into the sun. It's not the heat from the sun, it's not the light from the sun, it's the UV rays. We have UV detectors, we have UV flashlights, and we also have full spectrum cameras that work under the premise of full spectrum, infrared, visible, and UV. So
very nice, Dale. Well, Dale, before I let you go, you mentioned you have your Ghost Research Society. And I guess for everybody else that, like I said, that now know who you are, that may have not have known about you until this, where can people keep up to date with everything that you're doing? And you know what? Going back to you talking about videos and the photos that you have, are those all up on your website as well, or do you have like a YouTube channel, or how can people see that?
I have, first of all, they can get a hold of me through my website, ghostresearch.org. There's a mailbox icon in the bottom that can click on, or they email me at dale@ghostresearch.org. I also have a YouTube channel, and I also have a Facebook page for my timeline for Ghost Research Society and for my ghost tours, excursions into the unknown. I have written 6 books on the subject, including the one on spook lights. Those books are available on the website. What was the other question you had? It was I forget.
No, I think that was it. Actually,
Oh,
you kind of mentioned it, because
yeah.
I was just asking you where people can keep up to date with you, where people can see your videos and photos, and yeah, I think that was it. If there was anything else, go for
Yeah,
it, Dale.
there's actually a section on the site. If you go to the left side of the page and look for, it's called GRS Investigations, which stands for Ghost Research Society Investigations. You click on that, it'll take you to a page that's everything's alphabetical. So it's not chronological; it's alphabetical. So if you went down to see the Joplin spook light, or to see the Watersmead spook light, or to see the Moody light, or any of those lights that we investigated, they're all in there. And then, of course, the footage of the video of the Joplin light is in there, including some of those it's very cool photographs that we were able to take that evening.
Very nice, like the one with the tail, I guess, right?
Yes, that's definitely in there. Yep.
Very nice. All right, Dale. Well, it's been a pleasure, and I mean, maybe after this, if I can think of anything else regarding spook lights, I'll have to have you back on, and we can talk again to share some more
Sure.
awesome
Absolutely.
stuff. Yeah. And for everybody else listening, thank you so much for listening. And if you enjoyed it just like I did, re-listen to this and take notes, because I know I'm going to have to, because this was awesome. So once again, that's Dale from the Ghost Research Society, and check all of his stuff out. And remember, people, keep your eyes open, because you just never know what is going to appear in front of you.